the 80s and the author of A 1980s Childhood, From He-Man to Shell Suits, Michael A. Johnson, joins me now. Good afternoon, Michael.
Hello, Sally.
Why is it we're so fascinated by nostalgia?
Well, I think for a lot of us, it's a time when we look back to times that might be better or happier. We have fond memories. We tend to remember the good stuff and try and forget the bad stuff. So for a lot of us, the 80s was a great time, and we try and remember all the good things, like all the great films and TV shows and some really good music that came out around that time.
What age were you then, if you don't mind me asking, during the 80s?
Well, it just very conveniently, for the purposes of writing the book, I was born in 1977, so I was 3 years old when 1980 came along, and that's just at the point at which my memory started to function quite well. So I grew up through that era from 3-year-old to 13-year-old, so all of the best part of childhood, I'd say, was right through the 80s.
And what is it? What are the moments of that decade that really stick out for you?
Well, looking back, for me, it's the music and the TV and the movies that are the most memorable things. We had some fantastic shows. You mentioned already Jim Will Fix It. I mean, classics like that we remember. Films, Back to the Future, my favourite film still. My children today, they watch it and still, they love it. And Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Top Gun, all sorts of things like that. But the music was fantastic as well. We had Huey Lewis and the News, and we had some not so good music, of course. Remember Black Lace and Agadoo. What
was wrong with that? What was right with it is more the question, I think.
You were probably one of the many millions of people that bought that copy and made it number one for I don't know how many weeks.
No, yeah. I admit it never appeared in my record collection, but I have to confess I've danced along to it a couple of times at a disco. Will you let me off?
I will let you off, yeah.
So all these memories of yours from the 80s, from, looking back to your childhood, and we do look back on our childhoods fondly, don't we? Because I guess those were the days where we didn't have any responsibility. It was all carefree and, life was just fun.
Exactly. And, while some people don't have the greatest memories of the 80s, I think a lot of us do remember the good stuff. And we were young, we were free, we used to do all sorts of things. And it's amazing how much TV we were able to watch when we fitted in TV viewing along with listening to music, along with playing with all the toys like the Big Rack and Domino Rally and listening to our Walkmans and CD players and all the new stuff that was coming along. So we managed to fit all that in with eating all the sweets and going to school. I mean, I went to school like everybody else, and somehow I managed to pack all this in, as well as going out and riding on my Rally Grifter and just getting up to all the other things that you do in the 80s, like yo-yos as well. That was another big craze in the 80s that we used to play with. So many things that we managed to fit in. I don't know how we did it all.
Did you ever manage to do a Rubik's Cube, by the way?
No, I cheated. I did just the same as you, took the stickers off.
I think everyone did that, didn't they?
It's amazing how fast some of these people can do it, and they'll even do it blindfold now. I don't know how they manage that, but
amazing.
Clearly have too much time on their hands.
Funnily enough, I mean, Rubik's Cubes are still around. In fact, they kind of came back again, didn't they? And the other day, my 4-year-old, we went to the toy shop. I said, right, you can buy yourself a treat. What would you like? Just a little treat. And he picked up a Batman Rubik's Cube. Okay, if you think the normal just colour block Rubik's Cube was difficult, you try doing it when it's got a picture on it. It's even harder.
And they also brought back the Big Track. Do you remember that toy?
Big Track?
Big Track. Like a robotic transporter.
Oh, like yeah, you see, you're talking boys' toys now, aren't you?
Oh, of course. Well, yeah, I didn't play with many girls' toys. So.
You see, I was busy playing with my Cindy doll.
Yes. Okay, I didn't have sisters either, so I didn't play with that stuff. But, of course, the doll that I do remember, everyone remembers, whether you're a girl or a boy, is the Cabbage Patch doll.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You couldn't miss that one. People would fight over them, wouldn't they, to get hold of stocks.
They were flying off the shelves, weren't they? But you know, looking at things now, Michael. I mean, because you've kind of made this your business, haven't you? I mean, obviously you're the creator of the nostalgia website doyouremember.co.uk. So this is a big deal for you, kind of looking back over the decades and what the decades brought, not just the 80s. So, when you look at things now, and we're talking about how things were when we were kids, because you and I were obviously similar ages in the 80s, do you not think it's the same now, it's just different things, or do you think it really was that different back then?
It's the same. The world's the same. The people are the same. We just dress different, listen to different music, and there was different stuff on the telly. But I suspect that when my children grow up in 20 years' time, they'll be looking back at the decade that we're in now. I don't know what you call this decade, but the decade that we're in now, and having equally nostalgic memories. But there were some. It was an unusual decade in that this was a culmination of. There was a lot of political change going on at the time. And there was technological change. It was the start of the computer revolution for most people in having computers in their homes. So it was a time of a lot of change going on, yeah.
Mm. So you've put this book together, and like was mentioned about the website, obviously you look at other decades than the 80s, but you've obviously chosen this particular decade because this is about your childhood, and this is the decade you remember most fondly.
The 80s is my thing. Yeah, I'm actually sat here right now in an 18 T-shirt, and in my car I've got albums of 80s music playing most of the time. And I've got all the DVDs of the 80s stuff that I watch. But I love the 70s as well, but obviously I don't actually remember that particularly well.
Yeah.
So 80s is my thing.
You're currently wearing an 18 T-shirt.
I am. Yeah.
I love it.
One of the perks of running the website. I get a lot of freebies like that. So...
Oh, brilliant. You know, I think you and my husband would get on famously, I have to say. So when you say you've got 80s, you've got an 80s mix then that you've put together, have you, that you're listening to in your car?
Oh, I have dozens of 80s CDs. That's most of the music I listen to is 80s music.
Okay, so which band, which artist from the 80s would be your ultimate then?
Oh, for me it's Huey Lewis and the News.
Really?
There's just something about his music that just really sums up the 80s for me. It's that kind of... It was the soundtrack to Back to the Future, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He did, two of his songs are in there, and that to me, that's 80s. That's definitely 80s music.
So this book then, an 1980s childhood from He-Man to shell suits, is it out now?
It's out as an ebook exclusively now, so you can buy it, but it's at a special discount, 70% off the normal price. It's £2.56 for the next 2 to 3 weeks, before the paperback comes out on the 7th of September for $9.99, and you can get it on Amazon, the historypress.co.uk, which is the publisher's website, or in Waterstones, W.H. Smith, and any other good bookshop.
You've practiced that plug, haven't you?
I have.
Like it. It was very slick there, Michael. So, will there be more books to follow? Then, will there be more decades with new books coming out?
Oh, I do hope so. I'm actually in talks with the publisher right now to write I can't reveal the secret title of the book, but let's just say that it will be another 80s themed book, looking at one specific aspect of the 80s, which may involve big hair shoulder pads and all sorts of other hideous things like mullet haircuts.
Okay, well, we look forward to that. It wouldn't be anything linked with the fact that Dallas is coming back, would it?
It may be, but it's probably not. But it's certainly it'll be very good timing, really. Yeah.
What do you think about that? Were you a fan of Dallas, by the way?
I wasn't. My mum and dad were. They used to watch that, and then all the spin-offs as well, because there was Dynasty,
Falcon Crest.
That's Landing. There were all these different ones that came out of that, but I wasn't a huge fan of that. But I know that, from all my research of 80s stuff, that it had a huge impact on lots of things like the fashion. I mean, the big hair and shoulder pads and power dressing. Dynasty was in a large part responsible for that. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So will you be watching it when it comes out? The new Dallas?
Oh, of course I will. Yeah. Anything 80s, yeah. You can guarantee.
So you'll be whipping out your "Who Killed JR" T-shirt then, will you?
Oh, probably. Yeah. No, if it's 80s and it's on the telly, I'll watch. I've just worked my way through the entire 70-something episodes of Lovejoy from back in the 1980s as well, and so I only watch 80s TV. I'm a bit stuck in the past, I think.
That's all right. It's a good past to be stuck in, absolutely. Yeah. Michael, lovely to talk to you this lunchtime. Thanks for joining us. That's Michael A. Johnson, the author of A 1980s Childhood from He-Man to Shell Suits. So I'm going to have to play in this, aren't I?